Fireside Tales. Hello, I'm Merlin, Mililli. Welcome to my fireside, where I tell weird tales within tales. And I drink coffee. I drink coffee from my skull mug because I'm a deadhead. Do you guys know what a deadhead is? A deadhead is someone who really likes the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead is a band I happen to really like. It's a psychedelic rock band, but they got their name from a story in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And every week here at Fireside Tales, I tell the story of the Grateful Dead, as it should be told by a deadhead by a fire. But I tell the story because it's a story about reincarnation. And this is a show about reincarnation. I wanted to make this show because I really didn't feel like most of humanity understood or understands reincarnation. Little spill with that near miss earlier. I almost knocked the guitar down, and rather than knock the guitar down, I spilled a little coffee, I guess. Anywho, so every week here at Fireside Tales, we discuss reincarnation and the Grateful Dead. I do have a reincarnation connection to the Grateful Dead, but if you want to hear more about that, you'll have to watch our very first episode. First episode of the first season, I tell you what my connection is. Bless you. It's my kitty sneezing. There's nothing cuter than kitty sneezes. Well, baby hummingbirds are pretty cute. Anyhow, so every week here at Fireside Tales, I discuss a little bit of my book in the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records is an ancient library. It's a metaphysical library. You can only get there through meditation, unless you're already a spirit, just a spirit without a body. In my book, in the Akashic Records, as in everyone's book in the Akashic Records, the books hold record of your soul and where your soul has been and who your soul has been and when your soul has been. So every week here at Fireside Tales, I discuss my book in the Akashic Records and how my book is big and old and dusty. And inside my book, there's a watermark. I think it marks the Great Flood. But everything before the watermark is light and dry and sandy. And everything after the watermark is dark and wet and muddy. And in the light, dry, sandy part, the lives are much longer. And in the dark, wet, muddy part, the lives are much shorter. And there's record in my book of my having lived several lives. Now, I don't think everybody lives several lives. And I'll explain why in a moment. Firstly, I want to discuss a few threads. Each of my lives in my book are connected by excuse me, different threads that carry over from each life to the next. Fire and fire safety are my threads, some of my threads. And I have water in the kettle on top of my stove, and I have water in my little cup there, and I have water in my sprayer around the corner if I need to. This is pretty well contained. It's an inside stove. But if you have a fire outside, you need to dig a pit, but you need to make sure that you dig a pit in a place where there's no overhanging branches. And then once you've dug the pit, you want to line the pit with stones, and then you want to line that with stones. And then you can start to build a fire. And then before you've built a fire, you need to have a bucket of water or water accessible in a hose, bucket of loose sand or dirt doesn't hurt, a shovel, and you want to make sure that you're not catching any grasses or anything, that you dig that pit out real well, and then line it with stones. So another one of my threads is meditating. And the Akashic Records I reach via meditation. So before I meditate, before I do readings, before I do rituals, I ground and smudge. And that is so that you can get the most positive results of your meditation, of your reading, of your ritual. The most positive results available in the multiverse. So, grounding is a cleansing. Smudging is also a cleansing. Smudging is done with a smudge stick. This is a smudge stick. It's dried sage in a bundle. And when you burn it, it cleanses, the smoke cleanses your aura really well. You can use a smudge stick to cleanse your house of weird negative energies. I like to cleanse my house kind of regularly. I do all the doorways and the windows and all the shiny, reflective surfaces. And then grounding is for cleansing your insides. It's a breathing exercise where you blow all of your negative out. And you breathe in positive. You think an uber positive thought, and you blow out positive so that you're breathing in and out positive energy. So grounding, smudging, meditating, those are all threads that connect each of my lives to the other. Obviously, the early lives, fire was a huge surviving tool. But even in this day and age, here I am by a fire. It is definitely a thread. So also stones and crystals, both. Stars, astral projection, and interdimensional travel. Also, being a psychic medium is one of my threads. And being a psychic medium in every one of my lives, it doesn't discount this one, I spend a lot of time in the spirit realm. I like spirits. Some people think, ghosts are scary. I find humans, living ones, far more scary than any ghost I've ever encountered. And as a psychic medium and someone who frequents the spirit realm, I've spoken to a lot of spirits, particularly about reincarnation. Because everybody's always like, how could it work out? Not everybody could be reincarnated, and I don't think everybody has been reincarnated. We run out of bodies. But the spirits say that when a person is murdered, they are then reincarnated. So if you're murdered, you get to come back and try again. And if that is true, which I have no reason to doubt, I've been murdered quite a few times, judging by the largeness of my book. So this season, season 4, we've been discussing just one life in my book, and it's that of Hatshepsut. In ancient Egypt, she lived about 1505 BC. I'm going to wrap up season 4 today. I'm going to pursue other avenues, but yeah, so today we're wrapping up season 4. This is the last episode of season 4. So this is the last episode in which we will discuss Hatshepsut. And I was going to do a few more episodes, but I'm already starting to repeat myself. There's only so much knowledge we have of her, though there were a lot of things carved into stone, and thank goodness for that, because otherwise we wouldn't have hardly any information on her. But 1505 BC, there isn't a lot of information. And even her famous, I guess you could say, historically famous family is hard to trace because it was a really long time ago. So I'm starting to repeat myself, and I am going to be, in the coming months, working on proposals to sell this show to a network or a streaming service. I also am looking to sell the Love Show, which I also make, and I'm also wrapping up. I've already made the last show of season 8 of the Love Show. So this is all wrapping up. New horizons. I have new projects, new irons in the fire. We'll see how things go. But if I have any fans interested in purchasing the show, make a comment, make an offer. I'm on season 4, but I think it's 26 different lives in my book. So I can go on for 26 seasons and discuss my book and still not have told you everything that's in my book. So, if you like the idea of furthering human knowledge in reincarnation, hit me up. So, anyway, like I said, every week here at Fireside Tales, I tell the story of the Grateful Dead. I'm a deadhead, and I'm by a fire, and this is how it should be told. Once, long, long ago, there was a traveler. It was so long ago that she traveled by foot. And one day, while she was traveling by foot, she happened upon a little village. As she got closer, she noticed there was a crowd in the village. As she got closer still, she noticed the crowd was arguing. As she got closer still, she noticed that the crowd was arguing quite literally over a dead body. There was a dead man laying there, and these people were arguing over him, literally, but also over him in that they were arguing over who was going to pay his debts, who was going to bury him, who was going to pay for that. And the traveler just thought all of this was disrespectful and a little gross. And so she approached the people and stopped them from arguing. And she said, I will pay the dead man's debts. I will pay for a proper burial. And so they buried him, and she prayed over his grave, and she traveled on. And then one day, decades later, the traveler, same traveler from the beginning of the story that paid the dead man's debts, happened upon a life or death situation in which a stranger came out of nowhere and swooped her up and saved her life. The traveler said, "Thank you. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you save my life?" And the stranger simply said, "I am the Grateful Dead." It was the dead man who was now living via reincarnation. Some people think it's a corpse. Some people think it's a zombie. Corpses and zombies don't save lives. Reincarnated people who remember stuff do. Reincarnation, you don't take your body with you. The body is buried and prayed over and whatnot. The soul leaves the body, enters a tiny baby body, and starts over again. That is how reincarnation works. You don't take your body with you. It's not about zombies or corpses. The corpse stays in the ground. The soul moves on. So, like I said, this season we've been discussing Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut lived in ancient Egypt, like I said, around 1505 BC. She was one of very few female pharaohs. She wasn't the queen or the pharaoh's wife. She was the pharaoh. Hatshepsut's father was Tutmosis I, whom some people believe was Moses, also from the Bible. But that would mean that he would have abandoned his post and family and left. By record, he died. and had to be replaced. But 1505 BC, who's to say, really? He did have a staff, and so did Moses, and it was just a stick, but I don't know. Anyway, he ruled over a fourth golden age in ancient Egypt, Tutmosis the First, her father. And he ruled in the 18th dynasty, which she also ruled in. Akhmoses the First was Amenhotep's son and successor. Tutmosis the First was Akhmoses' successor. Akhmoses the First, his successor. Though he never used the title king's son. And I think that is because Hatshepsut's mother was the king's daughter. Now, her name was Akhmosa. Akhmoses the First and Akhmosa, I believe, were the ones who were related. And Tutmosis the First would have been Akhmoses' son-in-law. Which makes sense up against what I understand that Hatshepsut learned from her mother. Her higher learning, which we discussed last week, in that the ancient Egyptians regarded music and meditation, astral projection, interdimensional travel as higher knowledge. The theory of Hatshepsut's mother being Akhmoses' daughter also holds up against the title Hatshepsut was given at birth of God's wife, which meant she worked closely with the priests to lead festivals to the god Amun. Because of this title, Hatshepsut already was held in high regard by the people before she ever became pharaoh. Tutmosis II succeeded Tutmosis I, but died shortly thereafter. Tutmosis II was her half-brother, so that relationship was never consummated. And she was 12. He was young, she was younger. But he had concubines and other wives, probably. And he had a son, Tutmosis III, that was Hatshepsut's stepson, because it was her husband's son, but by another woman that wasn't her. but also her brother's son. So kind of her stepbrother as well, which is weird. But they did things like that back then. But Hatshepsut did not have sex with either of her brothers or stepson or whatever. But Tutmosis III, when Tutmosis II died, was far too young to take the throne. He was like 3. So there's just no way a 3-year-old could rule Upper and Lower Egypt. So Hatshepsut had been trained. And like I said, I think her mother's father was Pharaoh, and she was taught by the priest kings. Not just about the festivals to Amun, but everything. All the rituals, the traditions, the reasons why for the different depictions happened, and carvings, and she learned all about the ancient Egyptian culture basically from these priest kings. And they refer to them now as just priests, but they were priest kings. They were local kings. They ruled over local kingdoms, and they were also priests. So they had a lot of control collectively. Together, they had more control than the pharaoh. But they all answered to the pharaoh. This was 1505 BC, so this was well before anybody had any ideas about separating church and state. And things seemed to work pretty well with the priest kings there for quite some time. I mean, thousands and thousands of years. Pharaohs ruled. So the role of pharaoh is a lifetime appointment. Therefore, it ends generally in death, or perhaps in faking one's death. And that, I think, possibly Hatshepsut's father may have faked his own death. I'm not certain. If indeed he is the same as the Bible's Moses, then he totally faked his own death. But typically, the role of Pharaoh only ends in death. Hatshepsut's reign was no exception. And if you go by the spirits, she was murdered, but she was totally murdered. And it was her stepson. Her stepson wanted the throne. He had grown up. She ruled for 22 years, I believe. So he was probably, about 25 and ready to take over. And he murdered her for the throne. There's a couple of documentaries where they're trying to decide which skeleton is Hatshepsut, and they narrowed it down to two in this one documentary, and one of them is like just screaming in agony, and the other one is like smiling. And I remember seeing it and being like, "This is the one screaming. It's the one. It's the one screaming. It's totally the one screaming. It's not the one smiling. It's the one screaming." Because she went out with a bang and a scream. So mainly the murder is what I wanted to discuss today, because that's the only thing I really hadn't discussed too much of during season 4 here. So I'm sure she was murdered, and I'm sure it was her stepson or stepbrother, Tutmosis the Third. We talked about the pyramids and her architecture and her architect this season, and how I think that her architect was the father of her child. And he tutored her, the child, and I couldn't find any evidence of any other architects throughout time also being tutors. Like, it just didn't. They take on apprentices to learn how to be architects, but not. They don't tutor little kids. Like, that was weird. So I think he was totally the father of Hatshepsut's daughter. I think the pyramids were power plants. I think there's another pyramid beneath each pyramid in the sand. That they're more like diamonds. I guess that's covers it. I mean, the lions. I think. Well, I'm sure the Sphinx, before humans decided to give it a human head of a pharaoh, or just a royal Egyptian, because she doesn't wear the pharaoh's crown, does she? She wears, the Sphinx has just a regular headdress. But I remember it being a lion's head, but the lion was looking up at the stars. And all of those, they look like park benches almost. There are a bunch of carved lions. I think they're mostly lions. And therefore laying on and looking at the stars. And the lion sculptures that are for laying on and looking at the stars also have lions' heads looking up at the stars. The stars were really important to the ancient Egyptians. And like I said, we astral traveled, and we used the pyramids as like weights. Have you ever seen, like, when you buy a balloon, they sell those weights for the helium balloons? Well, that's kind of what the pyramids were for the ancient Egyptians who were astral traveling. They would tether themselves to these pyramids and then launch their spirits off into space. And that way, if they were tethered to the pyramids, they could easily get back to their bodies, because that's where their bodies were, was at the pyramids. And that's where Hatshepsut learned how to astral travel and interdimensionally travel. So every week here at Fireside Tales, I also have been singing Deja Vu by David Crosby. It's one of the only songs I know of that is about reincarnation. And this is a show about reincarnation, so I sing the song normally, and I wrote a song called Reincarnation, and I sang it a couple of times, and then David Crosby died. So I felt the need to sing Deja Vu in honor of David. So that's what we're going to do now. If I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do. Don't you? If I had ever been here before and another time around the wheel, I would probably know just what to do. With all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before. And you know, it makes me wonder what's going on. Under the ground. Do you know? Don't you wonder you. La da da. La da da. La da da. Da. La da da da. Da. We have all been here before. 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 Well, that's about it for me for this season and for this show. Yeah. That's all I have to say. Except have a weird and wonderful weekend. And thanks for watching. Have a weird and wonderful summer. It gets too hot to sit by a fire. So I have to just stop making Fireside Tales and go out and enjoy my summer. Thanks for watching. A Mililli Studios production.